Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Binda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Astotar Satashri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mayi Ki Jai Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, and welcome everyone to Srimad Bhagavatam with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. It is Monday, May 5th, 2025 in New York. And today we're starting with Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, chapter 14, text number 15. This is the story of King Vena. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Dharma acharita pungsam vanmana kaya buddhibihi lokan vishokan vitarati atanantyam asanginam. Translation: those who live according to religious principles and who follow them by words, mind, body, and intelligence are elevated to the heavenly kingdom, which is devoid of all miseries. Being thus rid of the material influence, they achieve unlimited happiness in life. Purport: the saintly sages herein instruct that the king or head of government should set an example by living a religious life. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, religion means worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should not simply make a show of religious life, but should perform devotional service perfectly with words, mind, body, and good intelligence. By doing so, not only will a king or government head rid himself of the contamination of the material modes of nature, but the general public will also, and they will all become gradually elevated to the kingdom of God and go back home, back to Godhead. The instructions given herein serve as a summary of how the head of government should execute his ruling power and thus attain happiness not only in this life, but also in the life after death. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the context here is that the sages, who are the same sages that enthroned King Vena, seeing him to be of abominable behavior, are taking the first steps toward trying to correct his ways. And so the first thing that they're saying to him is, on the positive, you want to instruct somebody, first you give them the positive. If they don't accept the positive, you have to take further steps. But here they're saying, if you do this, this happens. You get elevated to the heavenly kingdom, which is devoid of all miseries. Being thus rid of the material influence, they, in other words, people who live according to religious principles, they achieve unlimited happiness in life. So this is the beginning, or part of the beginning, the beginning salvo of their line of logic or line of placation of the king. They will soon find out that they're dealing with somebody who's not on the same page. He's of a mind to achieve unlimited happiness in this life because he's such a demon that that's as far as his consciousness extends. This is the typical of the demons. All they see is this life. They don't believe or want to believe in the next life, so they try to get as much as they can out of this life only. And in the purport, Prabhupada is he's making it clear that his mission is not just to get people to believe in God or to subscribe to some Hindu mythology or whatever, but some theoretical Hindu dharma, but more like he's practically following in the footsteps of Shukadeva Goswami and the sages of Naimisharanya. We're reminded of the verse Tadvag Visargo Janathaga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abadhavatyapi Namanyanantasya Yasho Nikani Yat Shrinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava. On the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So Prabhupada wanted to create a revolution, and these purports are full of very practical instructions for anyone that anyone can follow. Just as an item of curiosity, in the purport to that particular verse in the Bhagavatam 1.5.11, Prabhupada there is talking about, at the time of that writing, which was the early 1960s, I don't know exactly what year, but he's talking at that very moment, he was conscious of world events. And one of the world events at that time was that China was attacking India over some border discrepancy in Kashmir, I believe. China still holds some control over part of Kashmir. And now there's another border discrepancy going on today. So there's always going to be some border discrepancy. But Prabhupada wanted, he's presenting a very practical plan for how to not only elevate people's consciousness spiritually, but how to run the world, how to actually manifest spiritual culture in a way that world events are changed. The whole trajectory of the civilization is supposed to change as a result of people following these principles. And he says here, should perform devotional service perfectly with words, mind, body, and good intelligence. So the sages are trying to give Vena some good intelligence, see how far it gets them. But anyway, Maharaj, we'd love to hear from you if you have something to say here.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarane. According to Panchakalpatarubhyas Chakrapashanubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavemini. According to the Vedic ideal, the king would be a person of immense piety. We sort of lose that these days. We're used to the idea that our heads of state will be rogues, will be gamblers, woman hunters, lowlifes. But in the Vedic ideal, the king was a person of immense piety. Still, we see sometimes there'll be pious people. We don't usually see them on the streets of New York, but sometimes you'll see people who, by their bodily features, by their behavior, by their culture, they're very pious. Even among the high-class people, you can see misused piety. By piety, they've become wealthy, they've become well-educated, they've become respected, they've become powerful. And they could use all of those assets for the service of God. Previously, even today, people will give money to build a church, will give money for some philanthropic purpose. So it reflects a certain kind of piety. Yeah, something must be there, piety for them to have achieve such a position, and for them to do some good acts, reflect some piety. But the people of the Vedic culture would be immensely pious. Even the ordinary person, Prabhupada gave the example one time, I was there, of when he was taking his morning walk in Vrindavan, and we were going through a field, and the farmer who owned the field came out. And you could see he was like a real dirt farmer, gray cloth, the kind that never washes clean, and gnarled hands. And he prostrated himself before Prabhupada and the devotees and expressed his good fortune that we were walking on this land, which was actually the property, not his property, but the property of Govinda, the personality of Godhead. So he's just a farmer. But how pious he was. It's our good fortune that you've come to bless our field. Actually, it's Govinda's field. So that kind of piety could still be found even in an ordinary person. And it was there, in the Kshatriyas also, not just the Vaishyas, where the big wealthy people could give for charity. But the Kshatriyas, I've inherited this property, I have to use it for God's service. We hear the Dhruva March. Even we hear Gop Kumar, when he became king, he thought, now I can use this property for the upliftment of the people and the service of the Lord. So that was the idea. And we hear of kings who, that was their mentality, that this is God's kingdom, God's property. The king of, now, where was it? Where there's a holy place on the west coast of India. Give me a moment. Tiruvananthapuram, what used to be called Trivandrum, Tiruvananthapuram, the deity of Lord Vishnu. And the king and his ministers came to the temple one day, and the king placed his sword at the feet of the deity and announced that the whole kingdom belonged to the deity, and he was handing over the whole kingdom to the deity. And then he took his sword back and ruled on behalf of the deity. So that kind of piety could be found even within historical memory. So that's envisioned here by the sages, or advised here by the sages, that you can be that kind of king by your pious activities. You can achieve brahmasaukyam tvanantam, unlimited spiritual happiness, and your citizens will be uplifted. You'll get the credit for their pious activities too. That's stated elsewhere in Bhagavatam. There's some percentage. If the people are pious, then the king gets percentage of their piety. If they're sinful, he gets all, or anyway, he gets their sinful reactions. So the kings would be so pious, such pious people. You could hardly imagine how refined they would be, and spiritually exalted they would be. They would be like sages, even though they were kings. And therefore they were regarded that way as representatives of God. I've cited before the introduction to the King James Bible, where the translators are expressing their gratitude to James by the grace of God, King of England, where the feeling was that, yes, he's God's representative. And yes, so that's the instruction from the sages. You should be that kind of king, a king so a king renowned for his piety. Piety means, in context, following the principles of Vedic culture. Varnashrama Charvata Purushena Pradappuman Vishnu Rajyate Panta Nanyata Doshakarna. You should follow your prescribed duties and see that the citizens are following their prescribed duties for the satisfaction of Bhagavan. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you. As you were speaking, I was thinking how, especially at the beginning of your talk, you were mentioning how the kings of the Vedic age were expected to be immensely pious on a level that we can't even imagine these days, because things have become degraded so much that we're used to a much lower standard of person serving. And which reminds us of Krishna telling Arjuna, yad yadacharati shrestas, that as the leaders act, the common people follow. It's just natural for people to rise or go down their standard of behavior according to what's around them in the form of leadership. Just like, I feel I can speak for this very class that, I feel that all of us might consider ourselves being on our best behavior in your association. So in an extended way, if you have a king who's tremendously pious, it's natural that the citizens are going to think, well, we have to up our game because our leader is so great, in case you might want to address those points.
Yeah, they're well addressed. Yeah. Yad yadachruti shreshtas. Yeah, people, so yad pramanam krute is, he sets an example. So otherwise, sets another kind of example. Lokas chadanavartate, people follow. Imagine if there's a really pious leader, and pious, he was both things, pious in the sense of godly and devoted to the service of the Lord, and super competent. What a combination that he's religious and he really does a great job. You have everything you need. There's law and order. The economy is solid. Everybody has everything they need. The prosperity is there. Rogues and thieves can't find a place in the kingdom. There's no unemployment. Everyone's, imagine. I think Hitler gained great popularity from my little tiny knowledge of history. He really turned around the economy when he took charge, by maybe draconian means, but Germany went from being, the average German couldn't afford to travel abroad, and so on and so on. And after Hitler took charge, they were prosperous. So, people weren't just fanatically following some jerk. You imagine if Trump were to achieve zero unemployment and wipe out the American debt and all of that, people would he'd be an unforgettable leader, practically beyond criticism. Regardless of other considerations. So even if you do that, even if you're the most impious, but you can turn the economy around, then you're like a great soul. Maybe if you're sinful, you're a great soul. So imagine a person who has that kind of competence, that the state runs the way it's supposed to run, and he's religious, devoted to God, recognizes that it's not his achievement, but it's all the grace of the Lord. What a combination, what a kind of, what a superhero we're talking about. Forget these crazy imagined fictional superheroes. You'd have a real hero in the form of the king, a person who genuinely felt that this is everything's in the hands of God. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. It seems from Prabhupada's mood on these points that he envisioned that there was indeed hope for a time when the Krishna consciousness movement has some influence, gains in influence, and he makes he says either the king or the government head didn't really matter to him who was in charge, as long as they were Krishna conscious. The potential was there for there to be a massive turnaround in the piety of the kingdom or state or whatever it is.
Yeah, just today I was hearing, without commenting on anyone's particular virtue or lack of virtue or sincerity or lack of sincerity, but just this morning we heard that the chief minister of West Bengal just on the Akshaya Tritiya dedicated a huge temple to Lord Jagannath, built at the expense of the state. There's a place called Dig on the coast of Bengal, and they constructed
It seems that perhaps Maharaj has inadvertently exited from the meeting, so we'll wait for him to re-enter and remind him of where he was at in his sentence when he comes back. Lord willing, he'll come back very soon. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Yeah, it seems like there he is. Okay.
Sorry, I touched something and was booted, but did I get booted again?
No, you're with us.
No, I'm still there. Yes. Somebody might want to look up Dig, D-I-G-A, D-I-G-H-A, Diga. They just constructed an enormous temple of Lord Jagannath, just essentially I don't know an exact replica, but along the lines of the Jagannath temple in Puri. And they put an ISKCON member as a member of the board. And from what the devotee told me, the ISKCON devotees are in charge of the Seva Puja. So it's multi-crore project, huge thing. If you see the pictures, somebody online might want to capture it for us. And of course, there's criticism and this and that, but and of course, on the other side, it will bring in so many tourist dollars for the state of Bengal. So from that point of view, the state can justify it, but it's quite something that the government has, and of course they're criticized that this is a secular state and how can you be doing this? But they did it, and the chief minister, presided, I guess you could say, over the opening ceremonies. So such thing, who would have imagined that the head of the historically communist state of West Bengal would consecrate a temple to Lord Jagannath on that scale. And they announced also that Radha Raman Das, who's the ISKCON's trustee on the board, made a point that the difference between this temple and the Puri temple is that in this temple, everyone is welcome, regardless of nationality and other considerations. So it's really quite something. So my point was, or my thinking was, Prabhupada's godbrothers, Bharata Bhumite Manusha Janma. Now, what is that? Prithivitiyacha Yata Nagaradi Gram Sarbatra Pachar Hoibe Mornat. They knew this was true because it was in the Shastra, or in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But, it was one of those, yeah, okay, kind of statements. Nobody could really see how this was going to be a fulfillable vision. It was just, okay, one day, flower airplanes will descend from the sky, or who knows what may happen, the demigods may appear on earth. But there's not really a practical sense that this could come to pass. And now it's there. All over the world, people are chanting Hare Krishna, or at least they hear or they know of Hare Krishna. Nagaradi Gram, big towns, small towns, no towns. It's there. So how is it that in the future there could be pious kings, heads of state who do such things? But it's such events give a hint that yes, that this can happen. Even that we hear that the state should be organized around Varnashram principles, and we say, oh, come on. But it could be. These things are possible. And especially if someone, like Prabhupada's example was always Emperor Ashoka, because he patronized the Buddhist, what would you say, Sangha, the Buddhist ideal, the followers of the Buddhist ideal. It became well established because the state backed it. So these things are possible. It may not start here, but these things are possible.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. You have some live studio
You're
audience.
muted, it seems.
Hare Krishna.
Or at least I'm not hearing you. Oh, I see. That's my problem. I had a button that was the wrong button. I think everyone else heard you.
I was going to ask you if you have someone there who would like to read.
I do. Hold on 1 second, and Bhakti Ross will take over.
Jai, Jai, Jai.
Yasmin Manaste Nirpatir Aisvaryad Aroti. Translation. The sages continued, O great hero, for this reason you should not be the cause of spoiling the spiritual life of the general populace. If their spiritual life is spoiled because of your activities, you will certainly fall down from your opulent and royal position. Purport. Formerly, in practically all parts of the world, there were monarchies, but gradually as monarchy declined from the ideal life of religion to the godless life of sense gratification, monarchies all over the world were abolished. However, simply abolishing monarchy and replacing it with democracy is not sufficient unless the government men are religious and follow in the footsteps of great religious personalities.
Yes. So this immense piety is available to you. You can be the ideal example of what a king should be. You can be the exemplar for your whole state, and the whole state can be happy. The citizens can be happy. You can be happy, because the Lord will be pleased. but so don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. The Ma Vinashade, Vira, hero, strong, ideal man, Vira, hero. What does it say? Yes, hero. Hero. Don't let it be spoiled. Do it right. Otherwise, avarohati. A king who spoils such good fortune will fall down from his position. Fall down from his position. So don't spoil your good fortune. Act properly, and be glorious. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai. Saraswati Mata says, Pranams Param Puja Maharaj and all the Vaishnavas. The sages boldly told the king that if the spiritual life of all the praja is ruined, then the king will certainly fall down from his opulent and royal position. This is not a thinly veiled threat given by the sages. The sages put the king on notice.
Yeah, they were ready to help make it happen if need be. But they didn't put it as you will fall down. They're talking still in general principles. A king who acts this way will prosper. A king who acts that way will fall down. So they didn't just say, listen, king, if you do this, you'll be ruined. They at least had the yes, this is polite or judicious or suitable, best shot at getting it accepted, to speak in general principles. But still, as you said, it wasn't hidden that this means you.
It does look like they're using the second person pronoun in this case, Maharaj. I just
Let's see.
translation.
Yeah, I take that back. Prabhupada uses it. He's more tactful than the sages. Sate ma vinashate bira. You're quite right. Don't you screw up. Yes. Yeah, then the general principle is stated. Nripati, a ruler who ruins things, falls down. But right there in the first line, Sate ma vinashate. Don't you spoil it. Yes, thank you.
And just as a point of homework or additional interest, I was listening to a class given by your godbrother Druta Karma Prabhu on this very verse today. And he goes into quite some length and breadth about the decline of democracy. I'm sorry, the decline of monarchies all over the world. And he's very well spoken, so I was enjoying.
That must be, it's interesting. There's like a lot of scope here for elaborating these statements in Srimad Bhagavatam. A historian by profession could demonstrate what Prabhupada is talking about, how in previous times the kings were pious, and how they gradually became degraded. If there are any Shakespeare buffs out there, you could draw the examples from plays like Richard II, Richard V, and so on, and the at least Shakespearean version of what the kings were, and to say nothing of hard historical records. But then the mistake is that we pull out the king and we don't want the kings. The king is the representative of God, but we don't, but he's a lousy king. He's a sense gratifier. He's a hypocrite. And so we don't want these kings, and we don't want religion either, because they're in league with one another. So we want to overthrow the monarchy, and we want to overthrow, let us strangle the last king with the guts of the last priest. The men will never be free until the last king is strangled with the guts of the last priest. So that becomes the mentality. Get rid of the king and get rid of religion also. So then they throw the baby out with the bathwater, and they lose everything. They don't become free. They become more bound by the laws of nature and by the lower modes of nature, and become causes of the downfall of the state by another means. First, they're oppressed by rulers who are misusing the state treasury for their own sense gratification. And then they replace it with another government, which is worse or equally bad. And we've seen that. Again, I go to places where they've gotten rid of one kind of misgovernment, and they replace it with another form of misgovernment, because it's all by speculation. It's all by by whatever it is, but it's not based on the principles of varnashram or religious life or dedication to the service of the Lord. It's all something else. The best shot at democracy. Democracy being Prabhupada's depiction, a kind of cheating process by which those who have wealth and power cheat the people in general into thinking that they have the power.
Oh, you're muted, Maharaj.
Oh, I'm not supposed to be muted.
Now you're not.
Excuse me?
Now we can hear you.
Yeah. Maybe I was just covered by the A train, but I wasn't muted. But shall we proceed?
Yes, Radhesha Prabhu is on our list. Are you available to read, Prabhu?
Yes, I'm here.
Jai.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Gurudas Jayadvaita Swami Niti Namani. Rajana Sadvamate Bhyas Choradibhya Prajanrpa Rakshanyata Balim Grihnam Iha Pretya Chamodate. The saintly persons continued. When the king protects the citizens from the disturbances of mischievous ministers, as well as from thieves and rogues, he can, by virtue of such pious activities, accept taxes given by his subjects. Thus a pious king can certainly enjoy himself in this world as well as in the life after death. The duty of a pious king is described very nicely in this verse. His first and foremost duty is to give protection to the citizens from thieves and rogues, as well as from ministers who are no better than thieves and rogues. Formerly, ministers were appointed by the king and were not elected. Consequently, if the king was not very pious or strict, the ministers would become thieves and rogues and exploit the innocent citizens. It is the king's duty to see that there is no increase of thieves and rogues, either in the government, secretariat, or in the departments of public affairs. In the government secretariat or in the departments of public affairs. If a king cannot give protection to citizens from thieves and rogues, both in the government service and in public affairs, he has no right to exact taxes from them. In other words, the king or the government that taxes can levy taxes from the citizens only if the king or government is able to give protection to the citizens from thieves and rogues. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a description of these thieves and rogues in government service. As stated, Prajaste bhakshayashyanti mlecha rajanya rupinaha. These proud mlechas, persons who are less than Shudras, representing themselves as kings, will tyrannize their subjects, and their subjects, on the other hand, will cultivate the most vicious practices, thus practicing evil habits and behaving foolishly. The subjects will be like their rulers. The idea is that in the democratic days of Kali Yuga, the general population will fall down to the standard of Shudras, as stated, Kalau Shudra Sambhavaha. Practically the whole population of the world will be Shudra. A Shudra is a fourth-class man who is only fit to work for the 3 higher social castes. Being fourth-class men, Shudras are not very intelligent. Since the population has fallen in these democratic days, they can only elect a person in their category. But a government cannot run very well when it is run by Shudras. The second class of men, known as Kshatriyas, are especially meant for governing a country under the direction of saintly persons, Brahmanas, who are supposed to be very intelligent. In other ages, in Satyuga, Treta Yuga, and Dvapara Yuga, the general populace was not so degraded, and the head of government was never elected. The king was the supreme executive personality, and if he caught any ministers stealing like thieves and rogues, he would at once have them killed or dismissed from service. As it was the duty of the king to kill thieves and rogues, it was similarly his duty to immediately kill dishonest ministers in government service. By such strict vigilance, the king could run the government very well, and the citizens would be happy to have such a king. The conclusion is that unless the king is perfectly able to give protection to the citizens from rogues and thieves, he has no right to levy taxes from the citizens for his own sense gratification. However, if he gives all protection to the citizens and levies taxes on them, he can live very happily and peacefully in this life, and at the end of this life be elevated to the heavenly kingdom, or even to the Vaikunthas, where he will be happy in all respects. So if you don't have Praja Raksha, then you can't do any balim, levying of taxes. The protection of the citizens is a prerequisite to levy taxes from them. If you're not giving them protection, then they're getting hit coming and going. Their lives and welfare are at risk from the government itself, and they're being taxed. And this is stated also in the 12th canto. They'll run for the hills. Eventually, it's too much. They can't handle it anymore. But the sages are giving not only for the welfare of the citizens, but they're telling the king that modate, you'll enjoy pretya in your next life. Iha pretya chamodate. You'll enjoy in your next life. In our local Bhagavatam classes, we're reading about how the sages are giving advice to Prachina Barhishat. Well, Narada Muni is telling him that the rurus, the animals that you've sacrificed in your the rurus and Yamadutas, that was a different discussion. But the animals that you've sacrificed, they're waiting for you in your next form. Maybe not your next life, but after this life, they're waiting for you to pierce you. So whether it's suffering or enjoyment, it depends on how you're acting in this life. And so they're giving the king some impetus to correct his ways. And of course, when I see this, Rajan asadhvamatyebhyas, you have these asadhu ministers. I think of that there's levels of Vishayi. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wouldn't see King Prataparudra. He was saying, ha hanta hanta vishabhakshanato pyasadhu. This asadhu, this how unfortunate. Better to drink poison than to be around a sense gratifier. And so when my son Maruti learned this phrase, hanta hanta, then he was walking around anytime there was something unfortunate happening around us, he turned to me and said, Hanta, Hanta. And I was thinking about it in our current state of affairs. There's a lot of Hanta, Hanta in Kali Yuga. But actually, it's our great fortune that things are so miserable, because then your only recourse is to surrender to God. But that's a separate topic. I just thought it was interesting that this asadhu, there's layers to it. Ministers by their nature are moneyed men, and so that corruption ability is very enticing when you're dealing with a lot of money. And therefore, when thieves are electing other people, thieves are electing other thieves. But if the king is placing people into their position, then if the king is righteous, then he gets to hand select personalities who won't be so ill motivated in their posts, and thereby protect the citizens from that thievery. I'm reminded, Guru Maharaj, of your story. I think it was on a train somewhere where the fellow said, your position is more unfortunate than mine because you elect a different thief every 4 years. We keep the same thief. We just keep one thief, and he keeps exploiting us. But you get another thief every 4 years, someone who will just take everything. And also coming to mind is that in other countries, from what I've heard, the price of a thing is stated, and that's the amount you pay. And here in America, people go to get something, and then suddenly there's a whole slew of taxes attached to it. And I learned that when I started my business, I was just charging a set amount. And then one of my friends who has a business, he told me, I don't know how it is elsewhere, but in Hawaii, he said you have to tag on a 4%, 4.712% business tax, because at the end of the year, when you're claiming all of this income, you don't want it taken out of your earnings. You want to charge that to your customers. And so, when you get into these taxes, it's just one tax after another. And at some point, it's so overwhelming that you hope that at least you have protection to show for it. If I'm going to be giving all these taxes, I hope that, the roads are being maintained and we have school. There's something is there to be shown for it in our current situation. But certainly here with King Vena, it was quite a deplorable condition. He's claiming a godlike position as king and taking taxes, and the citizens are getting nothing in return. They're all so fearful for their lives. Even the thieves. Vena was equal opportunity head chopper. Rajan asad bhamatyevas choradibhya prajanarpaha rakshan yata blim grahnan iha pretya chamodate. So yeah, protect your citizens, collect your taxes, and cull the thievery in your ministers, and then you'll be happy this life and the next. Iha pretya chamodate. Guru Maharaj.
And I have one devotee associate who is working in government sector, and he attended a meeting where various countries were to adopt some sort of protocols or understandings. And so there were various representatives of rulers and heads of state, so ministerial level sort of people. And so they began the meeting, and the person presiding in the meeting just said right off, so how are we, that is, how are those of us in this room going to make money on this? It's just straight out, no, not even hidden. How are we going to walk away with this with money in our own personal pockets? So these are the thieves described here in Srimad Bhagavatam, ministers who are in high positions and see that we can use these high positions for our own enrichment. Also something that you said brought to my mind that we know of governments where the thieves and who are organized crime, that is thieves, and the government work hand in hand, where they're essentially part of the same partnership. So this is Hanta Hanta, this is Kali Yuga. How abominable. Hare Krishna.
Saraswati Mata says, today's ruler's motto is quid pro quo, Just don't get caught, and if caught, lie your way out.
Mm.
I'm reminded of a saying, I don't know if this is Srila Bhakti Siddhanta or our Prabhupada, for a sane man, it is all regrettable.
Mm.
We're close to the top of the hour. Radhesha Prabhu, are you able to lead us in kirtan?
Sure. I haven't been able to figure, there's some new settings. I haven't been able to figure out how to enable original audio, so I'm not going to play instruments, but we'll chant. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakaacharya Stotra Shata Shishman Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakaacharya Stotra Shata Shishman Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se ko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. जमुना माया की जाए, गंगा माया की जाए, भक्ति देवी की जाए, तुलसी महारानी की जाए, श्रीमद् भागवतम की जाए, समवेद गौर भक्त वृंद की जाए. All glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees. Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Radhesha Prabhu. And thank you so much, Maharaj, for being with us.
Thank you, Akendra Prabhu, and thanks to all.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Samaveta Bhaktarinda ki jai. Or Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.